It's super hard because there's a whole different culture, a deaf culture, that is very exclusive, and obviously there's been a lot of there's a lot of stereotypes about deaf people and about being handicapped and things, and deaf people don't feel like they are. They have their own kind of deaf pride where they want to be considered normal and that they can do everything else that everyone else does. Obviously they can, but I got a lot of questions like, do deaf people drive? And it's like, yes, of course. So we're like, how can deaf people read? And it's like everyone else. So I understand where they're coming from, but it's really hard to kind of make your way into deaf culture if you're hearing, and my companion and I were hearing. So it took a bit. It definitely took a bit. We got sent to a ward right off that had a lady who had learned to sign for one of the members who was deaf. She just literally learned to sign for this one lady. And she had been praying for someone to help her because all through church, 3 hours, she would sign. She would sign whenever she needed to go somewhere, to any activity, so she was exhausted. And so when the mission president came up to her and was like, hey, there's ASL Missionary, she just bawled. But it was super great to go there. So we had one deaf person. She had a lot of deaf friends, but she didn't know whether she could trust us yet or not, and how good we were at sign language, how good we were at the gospel. It's just kind of that deaf culture. Just, you need to know someone really well before you let them in. It's like a big, huge family. So it was actually a transfer and a half where we didn't have any deaf people to teach. We at first were only supposed to teach deaf people, so a lot of time we spent just trying to find, and it was super hard because you can't just knock on the doors of everyone and be like, are you deaf? So we'd sign in stores, we'd sign at restaurants hoping people would see it. And for the first month and a half was nothing. And we finally got to teach English people that were hearing, so we did a little bit of that, but it was just really hard for the first bit because I had been waiting for so long to go out and teach people. Obviously you teach people in the visitor center, but it's just a little bit different. So I was really excited, and then nothing was happening, and I was just like, okay, it's fine. Did a lot of trying to figure out where we could find these people. Anyway, at some point, finally, she texted us and she said, hey sisters, do you want to come over for dinner? I'll invite some of my deaf friends. And I was like, yes, finally, right? Finally we made it in. And we get there and nobody wanted to come. There was one of her roommates that she was living with her friend who was living with her boyfriend and her children that were there. So she came home from work eventually. That was basically the only person that came, but she had to because it was at her house, right? So she gets there, and my friend, her name's Jelena, the deaf lady that was in the ward, she had no hope almost for her friend. Obviously she had hope, but it had been 3 years. She had been living with Bronzy and trying to help her, but she walked in the door, and it was just one of those times when you know that the Lord had prepared someone, because she walks in the door and she said, my boy's grandma is dying, and she was so precious to them and they love her so much, and I don't understand what is death. Where is she going? Is she going to be in heaven? What's going to happen? Is there a plan for our lives? And I was like, wow, these are perfect questions. And our, of course, member friend who is deaf was just kind of what? She's never asked questions like this before, but she comes home wanting to know all these things. So we sit down, and deaf culture is very interesting in the fact that you spend a lot of time. A conversation is at least an hour. You don't just have a short conversation. So we had talked to our mission president about it beforehand, about how everything's a little bit longer in deaf culture. So we ended up being there, and he was okay with it. But for 2 hours just talking to this lady about the plan of salvation, and she was just in awe that there was something like that was so clearly laid out. And the interesting thing about deaf people is they're very visual. And so it was really cool to have the plan of salvation. You have your little cutouts and you can explain things visually, and it really made sense to her. At the end of the lesson, of course, the Spirit confirmed to ask her if she would be baptized. And so I started asking her, and our friend that's in the ward was just like, what are you doing? Because she had been wanting for so long for her to be baptized, and she had just refused so many times, but the Spirit was so strong that I knew I needed to. And she said, yeah, right off. So of course we get our little calendar out and we set up everything that she needs to do, let her know that she actually needs to marry her boyfriend before she can get married or move out or something. And she was like, I'm ready, I'll do it. So it was just amazing because it was definitely not anything that I did. Of course, I tried to do whatever the Lord asked me to do, but it was that He had prepared people and everything was ready. And when I came, because I was trying my best, He had things prepared. So she got baptized in like 3 weeks, and she actually, interestingly enough, made her house like the hub for the missionaries, and she would invite people over all the time. So what ended up happening is that I was teaching a lesson in the living room, and then there would be a lesson going on in the kitchen. People would have come over labor and be like, wait, you should start over, I missed it. So there would be like 3 or 4 lessons going on. We would just stay and like switch rooms to do different lessons, and it was amazing. And she got baptized, her family got baptized, her and her boyfriend got married, her friend got baptized in their family, and it was just like, it definitely wasn't anything that I did, I feel like, other than just trying my best. But the Lord had like a serious plan and just needed to keep it and to just kind of like stick it in there and make everything work out. So